We've got another 2 amazing speakers for you in store today. And the first one that I'm going to announce right now, our next expert speaker, has literally been all over the place. She even wrote a book about it. But since she started her travel blog, Everywhereist.com, back in 2009, topics have become increasingly diverse. It's everyday life. Sometimes while you're reading, you laugh, and sometimes you get frustrated, just like her. Especially when she's writing about a topic that she will be addressing here today at YoastCon. She wrote articles for the Washington Post, Marie Claire, and the New Yorker. And we're very glad to have her here at YoastCon. So give her a warm welcome for Geraldine DeRuiter.
Are you leaving? Are you not gonna? You're not gonna stay? Okay, we'll talk later. Hello. So you're gonna have to forgive me if I'm a little tired. My day started at 3:30 a.m., in part because of jet lag, and it was with me checking my Twitter mentions, and there were a bunch of people telling me to not give this presentation, which is really interesting because my presentation is about online harassment. But I was told if I gave this presentation, I would be a bad feminist. And I thought that is such an interesting and manipulative argument to make. And it's a great way of putting me in a double bind. Because if I give the talk, I'm a bad feminist. But if I don't give the talk, I haven't talked to you about feminism. And I haven't talked to you about online harassment. So I thought, well, if I'm in trouble either way, I might as well give my presentation and get my word out. So I want to start with a story about my own experiences with harassment. And because I'm a woman online, I have plenty to choose from. And this is something that happened to me about a year ago. So I wrote about cinnamon rolls. And about a year ago, there's an American chef named Mario Batali, and he was accused of sexual harassment. And actually, it turned out that the allegations were even worse than that. He was accused of sexual assault. And he sent an apology letter out. And at the end of his apology letter, he included a recipe for cinnamon rolls. Now, the internet went mad. They were like, this is terrible and awful and tone deaf. And as I was looking at this recipe, I thought, no one in their right mind is going to make these cinnamon rolls. So I made the cinnamon rolls. And I wrote about it. And the blog post went viral. Martha Stewart tweeted it. By the way, do you know who Martha Stewart is over here? Okay, so she's an international treasure and not just an American one. Good to know. So she retweeted it. The New York Times called my piece dark and hilarious, and I bring this up all the time. And as with any piece that gets a lot of attention, I also got some hate mail. And I should warn you all now, these are comments that have been made to me and to my friends. So the language is pretty terrible because I wanted to give you the impression, or I wanted to give you a proper impression of what women deal with on an everyday basis. So I was told that I was a man-hating drama queen. Some people had dietary recommendations for me. And about 24 hours after the post went viral, my Twitter account was hacked. So I handled this great. I curled up into a ball and didn't know what to do. And I found that even though all of this stuff was happening online, it was affecting me in a very real way in my life. There was no difference between the internet and my world. See, because online harassment, for a lot of us, is just harassment. And Amanda Marcotte said it best. She said, it needs to be seen for what it is, an extension of the harassment that women face and have always faced, simply because, well, we're women. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about online harassment, about what we can do together to combat it. First, to give you some background about me, my name is Geraldine. My last name is Dutch, and I can't say it as well as most of you can, so I'm not going to try. I'm a writer, and I have a moderately large Twitter following. This slide is a little out of date. I have close to 80,000 followers. And most of the examples that I show you today are going to be from Twitter, because that is my poison of choice, and it is where I get the most hate and abuse. It's also where I spend the most time, which is a bad combination. And as a result of being active on Twitter, I get comments. Like a lot of comments. Okay, you get, they're basically all the same. And I will get the occasional death threat as well. I found that as my work got more attention, I started getting more abuse. And I found that this wasn't just true for me, it was true for a lot of my friends as well. And Marika, I know that since becoming CEO, you've been dealing with your own set of harassment and garbage. Because that's what it means to be a woman who's successful and visible. And I found that this held true for so many women I knew. And it came to a head for me last summer, when I tweeted a photo of myself and two writer friends of mine, both of whom have bigger profiles than I do, having dinner. And I wrote, "Tonight, I planned the demise of the patriarchy with these goddesses." Now, to me, this isn't a controversial statement because I know what patriarchy means. But for the next, by the way, that word translates, right? Are we all on the same page? God, okay, see, I don't know how to say patriarchy in any other language, so thanks, American school system. It's cool. But for the next 24 hours after this tweet went up, my Twitter mentions turned into garbage. And as I was staring at all of these hateful comments, I decided to do something. I decided to talk to my Twitter harassers. Now, for the record, this is a terrible idea. Do not do this. But since I did it, I want to tell you a bit about what I found out. And the questions that I asked these people were always the same. The first question was, I told them I was working on a project about online harassment, and I asked them if they wanted to talk. Because hey, even if you're a jerk, consent is still important. And then I asked them what the goal of their tweet was. There would be a little bit of a back and forth, but my last two questions were always the same. Did they believe themselves to be abusers of women? And did they consider themselves to be misogynists? Now, sometimes people didn't respond to me at all. They would vanish like a fart in the wind. Other times, they blocked me right away, which is funny because they insulted me first, and I assumed that they wanted to talk. Some people critiqued the project, and they said, "You're wasting your time. You should be having children," which was confusing to me because this guy told me how stupid I was, and then he wanted me to make more of myself. But I found that a lot of the same arguments kept coming up in how they justified their behavior. And it's how we excuse harassment in general, both online and offline. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about those excuses that came up. One was, it's not that big a deal. Not that many people deal with online harassment. You're in a pretty small group. That's not true. An overwhelming number of women deal with online harassment. In fact, 41% of women report that they've been harassed online, and a third said that their most recent experience with that harassment was incredibly upsetting. And if you are a young woman, oh, you are getting the worst of it. You are getting unsolicited sexually explicit pictures. You are getting harassment. It is basically a garbage fire for you. And a 2009 study found that if you are a woman of color, you are getting the worst harassment online. This was another one. Online harassment isn't the same as real harassment. It's the internet. It doesn't count. Which is funny, because we do everything online. But somehow, the abuse is different. This person was being sarcastic. Oh no, you got a rape threat online, please. So I asked them, well, do you consider yourselves to be verbally abusive? And without fail, they all said no. And some of them were actually verbally abusive in the tweets in which they said no. Because they genuinely did not see how what they were doing online was real. And the problem with that mentality is, well, there's two underlying problems with it. The first is that there's no relationship between our online and offline behavior. Everything that we do online stays in a vacuum. And the second is that online abuse, that verbal abuse, isn't damaging in and of itself. And forgive my language, but those are both bullshit reasons. They don't make sense. This is Anita Sarkeesian. In 2012, she started a Kickstarter to talk about sexism in video games. She wanted to start a series of videos in which she just explored the issue. The harassment that she received was appalling. It was so bad. The threats were so explicit, and she was doxxed that she's had to move several times, and she actually had to flee from her home. This is Leslie Jones. Do you know who she is here? Is she famous? Oh, that is a crime. I am sorry to hear that. She's a comedian. She's on a show called Saturday Night Live. She's made numerous films, including the new Ghostbusters, which is awesome. But people don't like seeing a strong, successful, powerful, beautiful Black woman. And so this Nazi Ken doll in America named Milo Yiannopoulos decided to create an evil online harassment campaign. Men were ejaculating on her photo and taking videos of it and then sending it to her. Her personal photos and information were leaked online. Her website was hacked. She said she felt like she was living in a personal hell. Do you know who this is? Some people do. No, she's a Dutch journalist. I'm going to do my best. Her name is Loes Reemeyer. I think I said that right. She simply wrote an article about sexual harassment. And then the harassment that she received as a result was horrifying, including this blog, which seems like garbage. I don't read Dutch, but I was able to get that much from it, saying, hey, would you do her? And if you did, what would you do? Which is a pretty explicit threat. The Colombian organization Mujeres Insumismas received a series of online threats because of the advocacy that they're doing for women. And several of their members were physically attacked as a result of those online threats. 41% of women who are harassed online feel that their safety was at risk. And a quarter feel that their family's safety was at risk. And this is true of so many people who I have talked to anecdotally. I've received tons of hate mail, but I've actually received hate mail to my home as well. And it has a profound effect on the women that were harassed. In an Amnesty International report across 8 countries, America, Canada, and 6 in Europe, they found that women were having trouble sleeping, were experiencing anxiety, and were having trouble focusing on tasks in their everyday lives because of this online harassment. So when harassers say that what they do online has no consequence, they simply mean it doesn't have consequences for them. Well, if you didn't write about these topics, Geraldine, you wouldn't get harassed. You kind of chose this. The thing is, even when I was writing about travel with my rakishly handsome husband, pictured here, and by the way, this is usually the part in the presentation where people say, he looks a lot like Rand Fishkin. And I personally don't see it. I was getting comments like these. Good that you don't have kids. The world has enough kikes. So I decided to ask the women of Twitter, hey, since it's clearly what we're writing about that's getting us all this abuse, what's the most inconsequential thing that you've ever written about that got you online abuse? And the answers would be funny if they weren't so terrible. I dressed too provocatively for a physicist, whatever that means. I didn't thank someone who called me pretty and got weeks of threats. I talked about changing Wonder Woman's costume to having pants. And by the way, that's the American definition of pants, so trousers. She wanted to put trousers on Wonder Woman, which seems pretty reasonable. But she got harassment for it. I wrote a collection of stories told only by women and got 4 rape threats. And it happens to women who are low profile or high profile. It doesn't matter. The power that you have doesn't immunize you to abuse. Cheryl Strayed is one of the most influential and famous American authors right now. And she was told that she was a dumb bitch who deserved to be murdered because she playfully noted that a guy on her flight was wearing pajamas. I think Maura Quint said it best when she said, I wrote that there was nothing that I could do that wouldn't get me harassment. Well, we can't stop online abuse. That would be censorship, right? Okay, I'm going to give you a brief crash course. That's a hard phrase to say when you're a little nervous. In US mass media law. So, are you familiar with the free speech laws in the US? Some of you, yes. Some of you, no. Here's the amazing thing. We have something called freedom of speech in America, and it means that hate speech, Holocaust denial, waving the Nazi flag, just basically being an asshole, is totally legal and protected by our Constitution. Actually, in some places, it'll probably get you elected governor. And when I told my husband, when I saw what was illegal, that you can't actually be a Nazi in most European countries, I screamed to I was like, did you know that? He goes, no, that's awesome. The Netherlands is a great place for Jews. And I said, yes, it is now. I know. But the clause in our Constitution that protects free speech is this one, and it says, Congress shall make no law that infringes on free speech. Congress shall make no law. Now, here's the critical thing. Social media companies are not Congress, but they are adhering to these same rules. They're like, well, we need to preserve freedom of speech, even though they're not the government. And even under the First Amendment, there's certain speech that isn't protected. Like if I threaten you, or if I say something that's untrue and damaging to your reputation, or if I steal your personal information, that's not protected. But that harassment is what's happening online. And a lot of these companies aren't taking action. So they're not even sticking to their own weird rule of preserving the First Amendment. And the other thing that I think is critical is that, well, boycotts aren't censorship, but people always say they are. If there's a company that's doing something terrible, if there's a platform that's doing something awful, and you say, okay, I'm not going to support those advertisers, people scream, well, then you're an advocate for censorship. Well, no, I'm an advocate for not giving my money to assholes. There's a difference. And if you truly care about the censorship issue, then you should be aware of the fact that censorship is happening now. Women who are getting abused are self-censoring because of that harassment. And Dutch journalists are doing it as well. They're saying that there's certain stories that they don't want to touch because they know it's going to bring them a world of hurt. And once again, people of color are most likely to self-censor because of harassment. This is Kelly Marie Tran. She was one of the actresses in the new Star Wars film, and she was harassed off of Instagram because the abuse was so extreme. Now, online companies are combating abuse here in Europe because the laws against hate speech are more strict. The problem is most of them are based in the States, where the laws aren't strict. So the ethos of the companies is to let all of this just happen. The laws in the US aren't going to stop them, so we as consumers need to let them know that this is unacceptable. I get this all the time. You're taking it too seriously. You have no sense of humor. They're just kidding around, which is funny because online harassment is like one of the only crimes where the person doing the crime can tell you, oh no, it's not a big deal, it's not a big deal, and then just keeps doing it. Like if someone comes into your house and is robbing you, and you get there and you're like, you have to stop, I'm calling the police, and they're like, no, it's just a joke. Like that's not how it works. But with harassment, that's what's going on a daily basis. I have people telling me, oh, I was just shitposting, it was just a joke. I was just kidding around. You stupid bitch. Oh no, sorry, you weird cunt. Sorry, it's hard to get all of the things that I get mixed up. I get called so many lovely things. This guy goes, what? Just because somebody who you don't know calls you a name, you get upset? Please. I was like, wait, so it's better if someone you do know calls you a name? Like, I don't even, okay. Here's the thing. These people who we refer to as trolls aren't actually just joking. There was a 2012 study by 2 psychologists, and they took a look at people with trolling behaviors, and they found something interesting. Trolls have high cognitive empathy, low affective empathy. Well, what does that mean? Cognitive empathy is the thing that most of us in this room have. And it's the thing that enables us to predict what would hurt someone else. We can look at another human being and we can say, oh yeah, I know how to upset you. But we don't do it because we have high affective empathy, which means that when other people feel pain, we feel pain. Here's the interesting thing about trolls. High cognitive empathy. They know exactly how to hurt other people. Low affective empathy. They don't feel pain when they do. And because they have a lot of sadistic traits, They enjoy creating that pain and chaos. For them, it's fun. And I was amazed at how open they were with that. They told me that. It's a game. You can report me. I'll just create another account. This guy said, "Oh, I'm bored at work." After he told me this. And I noticed that our interactions were all about power. They were telling me what to do. Or I had done something that they didn't like. This person was mad at me because somebody else posted one of my tweets to Reddit. So they came over from Reddit to Twitter, found my account, and started sending me hate mail. I was like, dude, I don't even know you. But he wanted to shut me up because he was angry. And when I started asking them questions about the motivations, that power started to shift. And they did not like that. They would try to regain it by saying things like, "Oh, I can't wait until this article goes live." And when they found that they couldn't regain that power, they'd get angry. They'd double down on the insults. They'd get incredibly hostile. I get this one a lot. Well, your behavior isn't perfect. Oh my God, my behavior is so not perfect. I am horrible online. I'm kind of a nightmare in person. I got into a fight with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Does anyone here know who that is? A couple people. Oh my gosh, yes, because he is an international treasure. He was in the new Mary Poppins film. He created a musical that was a hit in America and is now big in London called Hamilton. And if that's not illuminating enough, I'm just going to describe him as a real-life Kermit the Frog. He's adorable, he has big eyes, everyone loves him, and he breaks into song. And I pissed him off on Twitter. That is how much of a nightmare I am. We got into a fight. It was awful, and I felt terrible. We all make mistakes online. But there's a difference between making a mistake and continued systemic abuse. But see, women are expected to be perfect. Otherwise, well, nobody cares. We're just looking to poke holes in your story to justify the abuse, because then we don't have to change. And there's this idea that we need to be perfect feminists. And if we're not, well, then everything we say about feminism just goes down the tubes. But that's not how it works. See, feminism is this imperfect thing. We strive towards it. We try and be better. We screw up, and we apologize, and we work on it. But so many people are trying to poke holes in that. Because, hey, if I can bring down this prominent feminist, then everything she's ever said about it, we don't have to listen to. That's not true, and that's not how it works. I could be a terrible feminist. Hell, I am. Oh, God, yeah, no, I am on some days. Really bad. Today, I was not. Okay, anyway. On some days, I'm a terrible feminist. It doesn't matter. You should still treat women well. This comes up a lot. Men are abused online more than women. I almost don't include this slide in my presentation because I don't like the dichotomy that it creates. It puts men in opposition to women, and I don't like that. And it's true, that men do deal with abuse. But here's the thing. If I scream, "Save the whales," And you say, we need to save the manatees. Well, we're not in disagreement. We both believe that giant aquatic mammals are important and we should protect them. You can care about abuse of women and abuse of men at the same time. And there is some truth to this. Men are slightly more likely to be called names than women are online. Women are more likely to be bothered by those names, and they are much more likely to receive sexual threats. And that last part is significant because women are more likely to be the victims of abuse. 1 in 6 women is going to be the victim of an attempted or a completed rape in her lifetime. And this is the most conservative statistic like this I could find. Most of them have it go up by a manner of 2. People are telling me, well, what about the harassment that the President of the United States faces? Well, you're ignoring the fact that he has a lot of power that most women sitting at their computers don't. And we can't decontextualize that women historically don't have a lot of power. We also need to think about the way that men are attacked, because men are attacked for not fitting gender norms. A lot of times with feminizing and misogynistic insults. And LGBTQ youth are attacked way more than their straight cis counterparts. Men are harassed for being allies. This is Louis von Ahn. He's the CEO of Duolingo. And when he wrote that his new incoming class of developers was half female, people exploded into his mentions with abuse. This is an American actor named Terry Crews who recently came out with his own stories about being sexually harassed and assaulted in the industry by a man. And he's been very vocal about his support of women in the industry. And he said, I'm a strong, muscular man, and I got abused. So it can happen to anyone. So we need to stop blaming women. And the amount of abuse that he has received as a result has been astronomical. He's been called emasculated. He's been said that he's a victim and not a real man. The way that men are abused online is the same as the way women are abused online. So if we make the web safer for women, we make it safer for everyone. Okay, so how do we do that? Because this is like a very depressing 30 minutes. Okay. The good news is there is hope. The first is that we acknowledge that this is a big problem. This is a Monty Python reference. Does anyone get it? Where the knight is getting dismembered and he's like, it's just a flesh wound. No, it's not a flesh wound. This is terrible stuff that's going on. I get desensitized to it, but I get called the C word like all the time. And we need to call it what it is. It's not trolling, it's not kidding around, it's not shitposting, you're not blowing off steam, you're abusing people. Online harassment is harassment and online abuse is abuse. You need to use your privilege well, if you have it. Stand up for people who don't. Terry Crews has done this. Mark Hamill did this. He came to the defense of his co-star when he saw that it was his fans who were attacking her too. And some of you are saying, that's great, I'm not a movie star. It doesn't matter. You all have some measure of privilege and influence if you're in this room. Even if you have a small following, you can support people on your Instagram, on your Twitter. This guy only has 2,000 followers on Twitter, but he was supporting 2 other writers who he knew were getting abuse because they were women of color. Amplify and support marginalized people. They are the group that is getting kicked off of these platforms by abuse in the largest numbers. Follow them, read their stories, because these are the stories that people are trying to drown out. Support organizations that combat this. There's numerous ones that are coming up. I believe that Take Back the Tech actually has a presence in the Netherlands. The other two are specifically US-centric, but I do believe that they do some international work. But you can look it up as well. There's a ton of companies that are doing this. Take measures to protect yourself. You're a tech-savvy group. You should know to password protect everything, to have locks on your phone, to have two-factor authentication, and a bunch of other things that I probably don't know about, but my husband lectures me about on a daily basis. Yeah, no, like, it's weekly, babe. What? Don't start. I'm giving a presentation. Boycott advertisers that are spending money on hateful sites that are harassing women. Sleeping Giants has a great presence in the Netherlands, and they specifically call out the advertisers on hateful sites. And a lot of times, the way in which we affect change is with our pocketbooks. We're the consumers, so we need to let these websites know that we are mad. We need to give them the feedback that we're not happy. And there's more of us who aren't happy than there are abusers, so they need to start responding to that, and they need to start taking action. And this is tricky. This next one's tricky, because I don't want to tell you how to live or how to behave. But given that a lot of these abusers get such a kick out of creating chaos, and they get such a kick out of causing you harm, and they say that it's fun, well, you might not want to let them know that they've gotten to you. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but it's something to consider. Because a lot of times I've found that when they realize they have someone listening to them, they just get even worse. Support companies with diverse founders. Support companies with women, especially in the tech field, because they're addressing these problems from the start. It's not a patch that they add on later. It's something that we have to deal with every single day, so it's in the forefront of our minds. When you see someone getting abused, be kind to them. Reach out to them. Check if they're okay. I can't begin to tell you how much of a difference it makes. It speaks volumes. It matters. It makes you feel less alone. Now, I've been talking for a while about my own experiences with abuse, and I realize that mine are not they're not even close to what my friends are dealing with. They're not even close to what some other women online are dealing with. So I asked some of my friends for their advice on how they handled abuse. And so I wanted to share that with you.
Hi, I'm Nijmegen Farsad, and I'm a comedian, and I'm also an Iranian-American Muzz, but who isn't? Which also kind of lets me get a little bit more of the online harassment than the average person. A lot of the bigotry stuff, which can be fun. My basic tactic is to disarm people by never getting as angry as they are. And it turns them off pretty quickly. They move on to other targets.
I think part of empowering other women is being a good ally to other women, which also means checking our own privilege and listening to other women, especially when it's uncomfortable.
So there have been a couple of things that were really instrumental for me over the years when dealing with online harassment. One of those things is humor, which I think is just a good rule of thumb when dealing with anything or anyone who's really challenging. And then the other one is chips.
Surround yourself with people who are going to energize you and remind you that this is not what you deserve to be around. You deserve to be around people who celebrate you and see you for who you are and all of the good that you bring to the world.
People online are rude. They be saying some real rude shit, but I'm here to tell you that it's okay. When you stand for something that needs to be stood for, when you use your platform for good, and the YouTube comments just start being a mess. People start being rude. Remember, can't nobody beat your ass. Won't nobody beat your ass.
Hang in there. Oh, and hang out with people in real life, because it's more fun, and people, your friends don't harass you to your face.
The young woman who's a YouTuber is actually, I think she just started recording a television program in America, like quite a big one. So I'm pretty excited for her. But all of this is about reclaiming these online spaces, because we're getting pushed off of them, and we're getting told how to behave. We're getting told what makes a good feminist. We're getting told, yeah, you don't have the right to stand up for people because you haven't acted perfectly in the past. We're getting told that you need to not give this presentation because if you do, you will be a bad feminist. We need to make the internet a better place. And we can do that. It's just a lot of work. And there's a lot of garbage to go through. But you're smart, talented people. I have faith in you. My name is Geraldine. I can be found on Twitter. I can also be reached via email on my website. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's late, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Come on, guys. Give it up for Geraldine.
And I don't think we have time for Q&A, do we? No. We have 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
I have
so.
to.
I know. I got it. I'm assuming I'm walking off stage. I don't know.
No.
Should we? What's going on?
Are you open for Q&A?
I'm open for Q&A. Do we have time for Q&A?
I think we have.
Do we?
Time?
3 minutes?
Yeah, we have time
Fast
for Q&A.
questions.
Let's just do Q&A. Who has a question? I have a gentleman over there who has a question. Please speak clearly into the mic.
Hi, fantastic presentation.
Oh my God, that's a mic.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's my pet square. Just curious, are there any stats on the age demographics of where this is coming from?
Where the abuse is coming
In
from.
general, yeah.
I have not, actually I shouldn't say I have not seen any. Predominantly the abuse seems to be from white men. It seems, and I think I saw something that's like the 18 to 40 demographic, and then there are outliers. So I'm not totally sure, but it seems to primarily be in that area.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any more questions, people? There's a question over here.
Hello.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask the same question first.
Yeah.
But okay. The other question is, what's the, let's say, considering about not replying to those harassments at all?
Yeah.
Will kind of make them go off?
I mean, does it dissuade them? Is that kind of your
Yeah. If you don't give attention to
That's
I mean, giving attention will light them up.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's hard to say, and I should clarify for the demographic of the abuse. That's where I have seen, like, if we're talking about a lot of these threats and a lot of the stuff that I've addressed today, that's where I've seen that demographic. But it kind of depends on how you define abuse and where that goes to. But with regards to if you don't give them attention, do they disappear? Sometimes, but it also puts a really heavy emotional burden on women to be like, just ignore it. So there are days when I'm just like, I'm going to talk about what a jerk you are and say a bunch of horrible things back to you because you deserve it. So like it's it's probably not the most productive thing, but I do find that when I mute, it's fine. I don't see them. I never have to deal with them, and they don't get an active live victim. So it works for me. It might not work for everyone. Yeah. But I think it's damn effective.
All right, we have time for one last question. There's a question over here.
Hi, breakfast friend.
Hi, baby cucumber lady.
I don't think we're going to stick with that name.
Okay.
Okay.
The whole other thing of people knowing your address and finding out your address.
Yeah.
Did you, and at what point do you approach the police and let them know about that kind of thing?
Boy, isn't that a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wish I did. I don't know. I have files that I keep at home, that I put things in. And my husband and I have things that we discuss, and there are conversations that we have. I have friends who have had restraining orders. I've had friends who've had to move. And it is very much a personal issue. I would say if something comes to your house, I'd say it's an okay time to call the police and just let them know this is what happened. And they can start a file. And when that happened to me, a friend of mine who's a lawyer, she just said, call the police and just start a file. They won't do anything, but at least you start the conversation so that when you have 2 or 3 letters like these, they have something to go on. Or if something happens, they have a start.
Right.
All right.
I want to thank you very, very much for this talk.
Thank you.
And I would like everyone to give Geraldine one last hand of applause.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.